Adam Emery, seen here yesterday afternoon in court, is missing. His wife Elena is too.
We were there for days, there was no sign of him.
From that point on, it became a much bigger story.
Investigators had a lip reader translate Elena's words to Adam after his conviction.
I was suspicious at the beginning. Nothing has changed that suspicion about him not jumping and being somewhere.
We turned into an international hunt right away.
Just article after article after article of where is Adam? Did he jump? Is he in Italy? Is Elena dead?
You could see how this could become a real whodunit.
For years there were reports.
With real life characters, young couple, their lives ahead of them.
Do you think Adam Emery's still alive?
That is a real good question.
That's the unsolved mystery.
Yeah, that's the mystery still. You know, where is he?
The NBC 10 I-Team, inside the investigation, mystery under the bridge. Where is Adam Emery?
Hey, welcome to the Daily Debrief. I'm Brian Crandall, joined by my NBC 10 I-Team colleague, Tamara Sacharczyk. We're talking today about the special we put together. Maybe you've seen it on our YouTube channel about the Adam Emery mystery, kind of an infamous Rhode Island story from more than 3 decades ago about a man who was convicted of murder and then disappeared with his wife later that night, the day they left court because he was out on bail. Their car was found on top of the Newport Bridge. They were nowhere to be found. So we want to thank the tens of thousands of views we've gotten on our YouTube special so far, and we're here to answer any questions about that special, which Tamara and I worked on for a few months.
Yeah, Brian, we were working on it for, I think, 6 months in total, going back, getting all of the interviews. And I know for me personally, it was really interesting just going back and researching the case itself, and then being able to talk to the people years later and kind of connect the dots, and especially the former, the retired investigators, because when you talk to retired investigators, they remember things right off the cuff, like it happened yesterday, as opposed to 35 years ago. So that part was really fascinating. What was your favorite part of putting this together? I mean, we did a lot of things for the first time. We co-wrote for the first time. We went through all these old interviews. We spent 6 months on a piece, which I don't know if we've ever done.
Yeah, I think it was talking to the people about it. And again, they remembered lots of it like it was yesterday, and talking to some of the investigators, retired state police detectives and troopers. You know, when they're retired, I think they're a little freer than talking about a case than, you know, they would obviously than on the job. So I think that was interesting. And again, I started here, you know, a number of years after this case. It started as we start the special. There was a murder 35 years ago. A young man named Jason Bass was killed, stabbed in a road rage incident. Adam Emery stabbed him after his car got hit and chased the wrong person. So Jason Bass wasn't even the person who hit his car, stabbed him. 3 years later, Emery goes on trial for murder and is convicted. And again, it happened before I started here, but I had heard of it. I grew up in Rhode Island. And to me, you know, it was interesting looking back on a story I knew some things about. And then just, as you said, researching some of the particulars, looking at the archive footage we had from the early 1990s, because, you know, we covered the end of the trial, the verdict, and then the search that night and starting the next day of the water under the Newport Bridge. So I thought that was pretty interesting going back. And I would think people who were around at the time would find this to be interesting, going back and seeing some of the old footage. And then I think people like me who kind of heard about it and knew something about it would be interested to hear more of the details. And then if you knew nothing about it, I also think it's a good watch because it is fascinating. And as we talk about all the time, crime mysteries are kind of a big thing now on podcasts and on YouTube. And I think people would find it interesting.
Yeah, for me, it was also important to hear from the Bass family. And that wasn't easy for us to find family members connected to this case, because a lot of the people who we interviewed, you know, back when this happened, I know that Jason Bass's mom spoke about it, his sisters, his brother, they have mostly all passed away. So right now, I was able to talk to Jason Bass's 2 nieces who are willing to open up about how the case really changed their family. I mean, Jason Bass was totally innocent kid. He was driving home on his way home for a meatloaf dinner with his family. He actually lived with his nieces. Their whole family lived together on Federal Hill. And, he was on his way home, and then someone just started chasing him. So it's kind of, interesting when you put yourself in those shoes that somebody's following you and you're thinking, this guy must be nuts. What's going on? And then he, eventually stabbed him. And of course, from Adam Emery's perspective, he thought that Jason had sideswiped his car. Of course, they later found out that wasn't the case, that Jason was innocent. And then he thought that Jason was trying to hurt him by backing up over his foot. But again, Jason was terrified, thinking, who is this guy and why is he coming after me? But the Bass family, the nieces that I spoke to, Crystal and Cynthia, they were so open and sharing their feelings and how it affected their family so strongly. They said that they remember a time with Jason and a time after Jason. They were pretty young and they have vivid memories of the police officer knocking on their door to tell, their grandparents that Jason had died and what happened. And they remember their mom coming home from court being all upset, saying that they were being harassed by the families. And they have such distinct memories. And one of them actually named their first son Jason in honor of Jason. And she said that was really the first time that their families were willing to speak about him again, that they didn't really talk about Jason after that because it was just such a painful memory. So after that, they kind of opened up about him more and told them stories about how he loved cooking, how he once gave the shoes off his feet to a homeless man, how he would bake donuts on weekend mornings for them. So it was really special getting the chance to talk to them, because I think a lot of people with this case, of course, get caught up in the obsession over where's Adam Emery, and understandably why. You can understand that would grasp anyone, the mystery of what happened to him. But at the same time, there's a victim here, and hearing from their family is so important. So I'm very grateful that they were willing to talk to us for this story.
Yeah. And just a reminder, if anybody wants to ask us questions, you can join the chat and we'll do that. Another interesting thing, just being at Channel 10 and in the news business, is looking back at the old footage and who is in some of that footage. You may remember Bob Ward, Caterina Bandini, the reporters, some of their clips that we used, and Gene Valicenti, who's still here. Gene, how long had you been here at the time when the Adam Emery case started? Because you feature prominently in the coverage, both the end of the trial and then the beginning of the search.
Well, that verdict came in 1993. I started here in 92, so I'm not sure if I was here just over a year. But I remember it vividly because I was in the courtroom when that verdict came down. And, we cover a lot of murder cases. I hate to say routine. No murder is routine, but the covering of a trial can be routine. And I covered it and did the live shot and went home. And I remember my phone going off, and they're saying that you're not going to believe this, but that trial you just covered, Adam and Elena Emery, well, the car's up on the bridge and they're missing. And everybody thought it was a setup. It was too unbelievable. They must have left the car up there and they took off. They hightailed it to Florida or Italy or a whole host of places. But about 9 or 10 months later, sure enough, her skull turned up. And I recount that story in the documentary, how that skull turned up. I happened to be doing a retrospect about 9 months later, and I was with the lead detective, Kevin Hopkins, who features prominently in your documentary. And sure enough, we are under the pylon of the Jamestown Bridge on the Newport side, or the Newport Bridge rather, on the Jamestown side. We're looking at a makeshift memorial when his pager goes off, and you're not going to believe this. It's a fishing boat coming in with a skull, and sure enough, we see the skull that plops out of the net. He gets it, brings it to the medical examiner, and about a week later, turns out it's Elena Emery. Another shocking twist. Nobody believed that she really went in the water, but she did. I don't know if she went in off the bridge, or whether she went in another way. But we know it's her. We just don't know where he is. Now, I think, having seen your documentary, by the way, I've kind of listened to everything again. It's most believable, I think, that he went in after her.
Well,
that's the most logical thing, but it's an open question.
Elena Emery's skull was found 9 months after the car was on the bridge. Yeah. Nothing has ever been found of Adam Emery. So
no,
right. that is the mystery. And as part of our special, we go back and talk to the investigators and other people who lived it and ask them whether they think he could still be alive. The FBI has not closed the case. They consider it open. I mean, they still ask for information, and they kind of raised some eyebrows. I think it was 8 years ago when they put out a tweet saying, you know, Adam Emery is wanted by the FBI. And again, as we've talked about before, that was now in the social media age, where obviously he disappeared in 1993 before that. And so now, you know, flash forward, that was 24 years later, you know, to try to get the word out on social media. But even the people, as you mentioned, Detective Hopkins, it's like they kind of go back and forth in their own mind as to whether he could still be alive. They think it's probable that he jumped, but they never found him. And then, you know, as part of the special, we talk about how plausible is it when if somebody goes off the Newport Bridge that you may not find them. And, you know, the investigators said, well, obviously it's a long way down to the water and then a long way under that, strong currents. It was dangerous for conditions for divers under there. So some of them weren't surprised they never found anything.
A lot of people that I spoke to, it was interesting because almost everyone said that initially everyone basically thought that they ran. I don't think anyone believed that they jumped. Right. And then when her skull turned up, that's kind of when things changed, when people were like, well, I guess if she went, then he probably went. But then I've heard, you know, because I forget who said this, maybe Bruce, the man who this happened on his yard, because he was actually a corrections officer. So also saw Adam Emery when he was locked up. And he said that he always heard that she wore the pants in the relationship and that they had, you know, a good relationship. So you would think that if she jumped, he jumped. But then I've also heard other theories that he could have been angry that she was the one who handed him the knife and put him in that position. So did she jump and he walked?
Well, and that was the thing too at the time, is that when her skull was identified, that only launched another conspiracy theory, or just theory in general, that well, did he push her? Did he tell her to jump first? You know, what happened? Where is he? So it really didn't put part of it to rest.
Yeah, well, all we know is that she turned up in the water. She's dead. That's her skull. Irrefutable. There's not a trace of him, however. And I told the story. The bones were turning up all over the bay. And for a week, people were bringing bones into Channel 10, believe it or not, in a plastic bag. Turns out they were prime rib bones from a Newport restaurant. But for a while, this had everybody in a frenzy. I don't think you can underestimate the importance of social media and security cameras and when it happened. Had this happened today, there would have been cameras on the bridge, cameras in the liquor store they went to, cameras where they bought the weights, completely different outcome. But back then, they vanished. Now, let's just assume, for argument's sake, that he never jumped. Maybe reflexively he pulled back. She went in, he didn't. How impossible would it be for him to maintain this charade wherever he is? Social security numbers, credit cards, just the ability to live on a day-to-day basis with your masking your identification. It is almost at this point unbelievable.
Potentially, I did another story earlier this year on a guy who took off during a trial. He was on trial. He was on trial for rape in Newport, and this was 20 years ago, 2005. And he emailed his lawyers that he was leaving, so there's no dispute that he took off. And they've never caught. I was
going to say he's still somewhere out there. They think, right?
Yeah, potentially they don't know, but he was never caught, and he took off. So listen, Gene, as you say in the special, it's like you leave open the possibility because they never found him. And I mean, listen, I think, as you said, it's almost a lot more likely than not that he is not alive. But I do think if somebody wanted to disappear, especially then, that they probably could have. And if you made it a number of years and you cover your tracks, I think you could make it.
You know what? Let me contradict.
Run out of money. Well, you could get a job, and if you go overseas, I don't know how it works. Like, how do you get an identification card overseas or something like that?
Let me contradict myself. All right. Let me challenge myself. Nicholas Alaverdian did it.
Yeah.
Had it not been for COVID, Nicholas would still be out there.
That's true.
Maybe we ought to interview him. Ask him.
Another story.
What's the likelihood that somebody could do this?
Yeah. He faked his own death by essentially just making up an obituary and posting it online. Although, again, and in that one, authorities, I think, were from the start suspicious that he was dead. But again, they didn't, as you said, Timmy, they didn't find him until he turned up in a hospital in Scotland with COVID, and there was a wanted notice and they matched the tattoos. But if he hadn't gotten sick, or he could have. I mean, again, maybe it was just a matter of time. He made it. A year and a half.
I think the early 90s, when you think about it, no social media. There's no way to really track somebody unless you work in law enforcement. And even then, DNA is in its infancy in the early 90s. There's really no way to follow somebody if they don't want to be found. And that's why it was so easy back in the day for criminals to get away with things, because they didn't have the technology that they have now. So I think if you really wanted to change your appearance, go overseas where nobody knows you and frankly nobody cares about who you are, I think you could do it. And then fast forward 35 years, would anyone even recognize you if you changed your appearance back then?
Speaking of change your appearance, that 30 odd years is a long time, and all those people in your documentary have changed, including myself, including all the principals.
The mustache sighting, yes.
Yeah, and by the way, anything is possible, and this sort of reminds me of the Hornoff case, another case I covered where this was a Warwick cop who was convicted of killing a woman, and we all forgot about it, put it to bed. And despite the fact of no physical evidence, everybody believed Hornoff did it.
Right.
And he went off to prison and we forgot about him until word came in that Hornoff didn't do it.
Yeah, right. Somebody else just showed up.
It was a shocker.
Forward.
And it was a shocker. So there is precedent for things like this.
Well, and Detective Hopkins, says, I've seen all kinds of things in law enforcement, so he wouldn't be surprised by anything. But he also said he went to court. Now, Adam Emery was legally declared dead by the courts about 10 years after he disappeared. And, that may have been more of a formality because the family members were trying to get their property. It was tied up because they put it up as collateral for his bail, which is why he was out at the time. He was initially locked up after the murder, and then they put up property as bail. But he said in court, I've looked for people all over the world and I've always found them, and I never found Adam Emery.
Just for a second, I don't know which one of you covered this particular part. Talk about the money and the money coming out of the bank account, and what was the significance of that?
Yeah, so Detective Hopkins said, of course, they're tracking the money in the bank accounts. So he said there was about $80,000 in Adam and Elena Emery's bank accounts. And so, we were talking about how do you track somebody? Well, I guess, the first thing you do is you don't use a credit card. And again, probably in the early 90s, a lot of people may still have not been using credit cards. But anyway, they were tracking the bank account. He said there was about $80,000, and he was seeing there was withdrawals from their accounts. So that was suspicious. But and then I think there were payments in Florida, and so they were keeping an eye on that. But he said it turned out that the family members had access to the bank accounts and it looked like they were paying their own private investigator, who was out of Florida.
Right.
So he seemed to put that to rest, but it was the wanted poster for Adam Emery. Says he could still be in Florida or Italy. And the Italy connection was because Elena's family was from a village in Italy. But he said they had investigators look around there and didn't find anything. But he said they were tracking the bank accounts. For years, he said they would have people go to funerals of family members or people that they knew to see if he would show up.
Yeah.
Well, speaking, Tammy, did you hear from her sisters at all? Did they decline to take part?
That was me. I reached out.
That was Brian. Yeah.
I reached out to Elena Emery's sisters. I believe she has 3. And I did initially, I just called and talked to one of them on the phone, and she talked to me for quite a bit and seemed potentially interested in talking more. And she told me a few things, which I say in the special about how, I think they always thought they were dead from the start and that they had jumped off the bridge. But then, she left open the possibility of talking to us, but then didn't call back, and then nobody returned my calls. I reached out to the other siblings, and I believe Adam Emery might, from what I think, and I tried to call people who were his relatives,
right,
but never heard back. And again, they never really, for the most part, you were there then. I don't think either one of their families talked to us back then. Her family members had talked to NBC News for a Katie Couric special which we used a clip of back then, and they were saying from the start they thought the two of them had jumped off the bridge and they were not alive.
In the documentary, this jarred my memory. I did do an interview with her father, Mr. DeRocco, who for a long time was a fruit peddler on Route 2, just across from where Cardi's is. That's where you would see him. Now, he has since passed away. And I do remember having a conversation with one of her sisters, a cordial conversation, which was unusual because the family was very, very angry at the media. And it was not a good relationship between us and the DeRocco family, starting in court. There was a blow up in court, and the brother, who has since also passed away, was very, very angry. And they were very, very angry at the media. And all these years passing, I do have what's the right word? Some sympathy for her mother and father, who went through a lot. Just went through a lot. We were chasing them down on the beach. It was not a good scene. They eventually lost their daughter too. So this is not to justify anything, but just from a human point of view, I these years later, I do have a touch of sympathy for the mother and father. They went through a lot.
And that's the thing that you don't want to get lost. I mean, we speculate, and it's focused on the mystery and where is he, and some, and we kind of talk about that, and it comes with, maybe a different emotion. But our special kind of ends turning back to the tragedy that started it all, the murder of Jason Bass. Mm-hmm.
There are families who really suffered, really suffered because of
and
that.
The story turned. Now it was 3 years later. All turned to where is Adam Emery.
Right.
And so you have that family who I think, and Tammy, they probably feel like they were, in a way, an afterthought in what became the sensation. But then you're right. You do have their families, Adam and Elena's families as well. I mean, I think some of them still think he acted in self-defense. That was his claim. And I think some of them still believe that to this day. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, in the end, at least two people are dead, and maybe a third in Adam Emery.
And Jason Bass's brother was very, very loyal to his brother. Would text me even years later. He would check in with me, when are you going to follow up on the story? So I don't know. It's just human nature. So much time has passed that you can see the humanity in both sides. So an enduring mystery.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you'd like to watch our special at home, it's still airing on YouTube. The link is right there on your screen, I believe. And we also have an air date, Brian, right?
Yeah, I think it will be on TV in November.
It's on a Sunday at noon.
Yeah, but for now, you can watch it anytime. You can go to the NBC 10 WJAR YouTube channel, or you can just search or Google WJAR NBC 10 YouTube Adam Emery, and you should find it. And as I said, we appreciate the people who've taken a look so far. We put a lot of work into it. Tammy, and then our great photographers, Travis Jones, Scott Santos, our I-Team executive producer, Suzanne Nato Beaver, looked up all the old footage,
all that archive video,
all the old footage that we went through. So and Gene's a big part in it as well, in terms of his recollections of what happened. So take a look and let us know what you think.
Great job. Good job.
Thanks.